Hello all of you tantalising electrical sockets and unguarded communal biscuits. My name is Jules Gill from WhatCulture.com and I'm here in glorious live action because yes, it is time for Choose Your Own Adventure, a weekly format with a brilliant title, might I add, where I present a list chosen by you lovely people. Now this week we have John05/Kazukan to thank for this title of the 10 worst ways video games took away your favourite powers. Now here's the thing, I arguably am the most powerful being in this company, who isn't named Adam, Simon, or Josh, Rich, Ash, Rach, or Ewan, or Scott. Anyway, I'm a pretty powerful being still. I'm a word assassin, a poetic paladin, got a kid so I rub her up because I don't want to be a dad again. Got bars, brother, but there are times where I feel like my energy has just been sucked from my veins, leaving my bones all soggy. And I hate it that some video games seem to do the same thing from time to time. Now I get it, games have to be balanced, and that by the end of most titles you are often overpowered. So I do understand why they strip away these things, but sometimes sequels truly take the piss with how they punch the reset button. So let's take a look at 10 of them today, shall we? But before we do, you know the drill. Drop your suggestions for next week's episode down below, and I'll turn one of the best into this top quality content. Now let's crack on. Number 10, Dante sells his devil arms to pay his rent. Devil May Cry 5. The Devil May Cry series traditionally ditches most, if not all, of the weapons and abilities gained in the previous game, and normally doesn't even bother explaining why. Although the third game does actually get a bit of a pass because it was in fact a prequel. And you know what? If it had just stayed like that, we'd not be discussing it here today on this list. But on the eve of the recent release of Devil May Cry 5, fans once again began to ponder why Dante's devil arm weapons were just gone. All of the things you'd attained throughout the fourth game were nowhere to be seen this time around. And hilariously, the game's director actually gave an answer in a pre-release interview, claiming that he'd sold them all to pay the bloody rent. Now, I'm sorry, are you telling me that this man, who could literally wipe out an entire demon army just like that, can't have enough shrapnel in his back pocket to pick up the next round? I know those leather dusters aren't cheap, mate, but he's clearly got a good support network who surely could have stopped him from pawning some of the most devastating items ever. In fact, it raises the question about who has these items now. I don't want to think about who's running around with them on the streets. Bad times. Number 9, the supercharged gravity gun gets conveniently nerfed. Half-Life 2 Episode 1. Now Half-Life 2 actually comes up with a pretty solid explanation for Gordon Freeman's arsenal of weapons being stripped away at the beginning of the second game. That being that the G-Man took them all at the end of the first one. Skew, G-Man! But less convincing is Half-Life 2's transparent attempt to portion out the use of the supercharged gravity gun. Now, though players have the normal gravity gun for most of the game, in Half-Life 2's penultimate level, it becomes supercharged by interacting with Combine technology, now allowing the player to throw far larger objects and also organic matter. And yes, you know what I'm talking about, that does indeed mean humans. Oh, what times. It is an epic power fantasy for sure, though it's one that is unfortunately short-lived, because as the supercharged power is only sporadically available in the follow-up Half-Life 2 Episode 1. Now, once you reactivate the Citadel's core containment field, the gravity gun just permanently reverts to its original state, and players are never once given the opportunity to supercharge it again in Episode 2. Well, without cheating, that is anyway. I mean, it's clearly a case of Valve realizing that the weapon was too overpowered to be in the player's possession forevermore, but it was a blast to use, and God, I miss it. You G-Man! I just want to say that again. Number 8, Sonic loses the Chaos Emeralds because Knuckles runs into him. Sonic the Hedgehog 3. The third, and some would say best, Sonic game opens with a cutscene where the blue blur uses the Chaos Emeralds to turn into Super Sonic, implying that regardless of whether or not you actually collected all of the Chaos Emeralds in Sonic 2 personally, canonically the character did, which is just lovely to see him doing well. Makes you feel like a proud parent. Good on you, mate. And yet, as Sonic arrives on Angel Island Zone, he's surprised by the appearance of Knuckles, who bumps into him, causing him to drop all of the Chaos Emeralds and revert back to his basic blue self. That's a bit embarrassing. It's a bit embarrassing indeed. Knuckles then runs off with the Emeralds, kick-starting the events of the game, where Sonic and Tails must reclaim them together and get their possessions back. Now, here's the thing. Knuckles laying a trap to steal the Emeralds from Sonic isn't an inherently bad idea, but could the trap maybe have been something a bit more epic and clever and less bum-rushy? Like, I mean, if that's all it took to take the most powerful items in their world off Sonic, I stand as good a chance of executing this plan. I mean, I just fucking boff him with a bat and then pick him up and then, oh, my beard's looking like Goku, mother brothers. But no, bit embarrassing, isn't it? Number 7, nothing carries over from the first game because Activision. Destiny 2. I think it's fair to say that there were a lot of Destiny players who had spent hundreds, if not thousands of hours building up their characters and getting fully invested in them. So there was collective baffled dismay when Bungie confirmed that character progression would not transfer over to Destiny 2 because of reasons. I mean, though your character's appearance would transfer, none of your gear, weapons, or even your Eververse items that you paid for with real money would be available in Destiny 2. No, please. Thanks. Neither Bungie nor publisher Activision have ever given fans a particularly satisfying explanation for this, but the in-game reason was that the villains simply destroyed the tower and that just had all of your possessions in it. But I mean, here's the thing, given that Bungie was promised to have a 10-year plan, it's incredibly insulting for them to do this to the fans that actually made the first game a success in the first place, don't you think? Number 6, Samus ditches basically everything for no reason. Super Metroid. One of the defining characteristics of the Metroid games is the progressive means through which Samus collects abilities across a sprawling and vast map. And yet the developers had to come up with some way of making sure that they could reset the items gained for the next trip around the solar system. Now, though many of these games give players some sort of half-assed explanations for Samus losing her goodies, such as, I don't know, her suit becoming damaged or infected, or the antagonist just straight up stealing them, 1994's Super Metroid didn't even bother with this, because the game begins with Samus heading to battle Ridley, and despite Super Metroid being a direct follow-up to Metroid 2, Samus's weapons and abilities are oddly nowhere to be seen, with the only usable one being the power beam. Now, this is your arch nemesis. You might need more than a fancy arm projector here, mate, but it looks like you've left everything else back at base. Brilliant. Number 5, SAMANOSUKE'S weapons and powers are wiped out by time travel. ONIMUSHA 3 Demon Siege. In the ONIMUSHA series, protagonist SAMANOSUKE is imbued with the power of the Oni clan, allowing him to battle the demonic entities known as Genma, absorbing their souls in order to enhance his weapons and armor. It's kind of like mugging, but with spirit energy, so apparently it's okay because video games. But you know what? A spanner is thrown into the works pretty hard in the third game when SAMANOSUKE is accidentally transported from feudal Japan to modern-day Paris circa 2004. Bit of a weird mix there. He quickly notices that not only has his gauntlet been drained entirely of its Oni power, but his previous weapons have also disappeared. It's strange that he got to keep his clothes and other personal artifacts, but these, they're just gone. I mean, obviously it was a convenient way to reset his abilities and have the player fight to build them back up again, but I mean, it definitely stung to lose all of your goodies through this weird little time hop. Bum me out thinking about that now. Good game though. Brilliant game. Number 4, the EDINCOAT dies with AERIS. Final Fantasy VII. AERIS, or AERIS' out of nowhere demise in Final Fantasy VII is still one of the most shocking and upsetting moments in video game history. And yet, it can become even more upsetting when you realise that anything that she had equipped on her person, with the exception of her accessories and materia, is now also lost. Now let that sink in, because what's especially irksome about this is that shortly before AERIS, or Aerith, was felled by Sephiroth's blade, there was a good chance that you recently picked up the EDINCOAT, a rare piece of armour which you may have just equipped to, you guessed it, this lass. Now, as a result, it's highly likely that you ended up losing the EDINCOAT mere moments after acquiring it, and even though there isn't any sort of in-game narrative reason why Cloud couldn't get the equipment back from her corpse. And yes, you can get around this, by the way, I do know, and yes, it is very situational, but also yes, it did happen to me, and yes, I am still salty about it, so that's why it's on the list. Enjoy. Number 3, an earthquake wipes out the ability to breathe underwater. Ecco the Dolphin, The Tides of Time. Sega's 1992 action-adventure classic Ecco the Dolphin normally requires the player to keep an eye on their air meter, surfacing for air periodically so as not to suffocate. But near the end of the game, Ecco comes into contact with this weird ancient being known as the Asterite, which grants Ecco numerous powers, including pretty much the most handy one of all, the ability to breathe underwater. Nice! But here's the sequel. It's coming along fast. What's going on in here? It's called Ecco the Dolphin Tides of Time, and it begins with the death of Asterite, resulting in all of Ecco's abilities being snatched away in the game. As such, you once again need to manage that pesky air meter, as it is one of the most laborious elements of the original game. I do not know why Sega wanted to bring this back. We all hated it. Oh, what's that? You wanted some realism in your game? Well, try not putting this mechanic in the same game as actual aliens and time travel. Mixed messages. Number 2, Batman abandons the shock gloves because he prefers using his fists. Batman Arkham Asylum. One of Arkham Origins' big highlights was the inclusion of shock gloves, these electrified gauntlets which allowed the Dark Knight to just pound his enemies into a stunned stupor and make them ride the bloody lightning. They were absolutely broken in combat, by the way, because they make just normal brawls an absolute cakewalk, but it did leave fans wondering why they didn't return for Asylum, City, and of course, Night. Riddle trophies in a car. Well, it turns out actually that Arkham Knight does in fact offer up some sort of fairly pathetic wishy-washy explanation for this. If you visit the evidence room at the GCPD lockup, security guard Aaron Cash suggests that the Caped Crusader actually prefers to beat up bad guys using his fists. It is fun, but I guess that Batman does offer up another sort of stupid explanation saying that the gloves give off an electromagnetic pulse, which means that they can track him, but you eat Goonios for breakfast, mate, and wash it down with a glass of gravel throat. It was basically a moment of Rockstar acknowledging that this was an odd and somewhat stupid decision. And I miss them for how broken they were. And number 1, X gives up his weapons and armor to avoid abusing his powers. Mega Man X series. In similar fashion to the Metroid games, the Mega Man franchise has largely forced the titular protagonist to start each game from scratch, arsenal-wise, reacquiring weapons over the course of the game, leading up to those epic final conclusions. And this is also true of the various Mega Man spin-off franchises. But in the case of Mega Man X, there were some occasional attempts to try and hand-wave why we started anew, and they're not brilliant excuses, because it's implied that X discards each set of new weapons and armor at the end of a given adventure to avoid becoming corrupted by its power. Now, while I commend the young boybot for not wanting to fall off the wagon, it doesn't explain why he constantly then goes on to acquire new powers when he could just take the old ones that he had out of storage. It makes no sense. Why smash him up? Just save him for later. It's not like you won't have another set of Robot Master to take down Dr. Wily. He's not going to slow down making him at any point. Think ahead. Think smart. You're better than that. Anyway, that's the end of the list. And there we go, my friends. Those were the 10 worst ways that video games take away your favourite powers. Let me know what you thought about it down in the comments section below, as well as just have a little think and say to yourself, what would I like to see on WhatCulture.com next week? Well, pop that down there too as well, and maybe you'll see my stupid face present it next week. Also, thank you very much for everyone that's in the live chat, whoever this person is. Now, Whoa, what a funny thing they've said. Haha, brilliant, right? I'll be doing this every Tuesday, so I will see you back here next week. But before I go, I just want to say one thing. I hope that you are well, my friends, and I'm recording this on Valentine's Day, the day of corporate mandated love. Isn't that brilliant? But here's the thing, I know that there are some people out there who need a lot of love, and you can start right now by being fair and kind to yourself. Show yourself some love, because believe it or not, you bloody deserve it. You deserve love, happiness and success, the 3 pillars of life. And if you are struggling with that, just remember, you are not alone. Friends, families, professionals in the support industry, I know I bang on about this, but there's a reason why. Because every person that I've just listed, and myself, cares about you and wants you to do well. If you're struggling, please reach out and speak to someone. It's the start of possibly a difficult road, but it's the start. As always, I've been Jules. You can go follow me at RetroJ with a 0 over on Twitter. You have been awesome. Never forget that. I'll speak to you soon. Bye.